And it wasn't the miracle that we were praying for, but looking back now, is the miracle that we needed. I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful that God didn't shield me from that, and that I was able to go through and feel all those emotions. My family and I, we had planned to go to Hawaii for my wife's cousin's wedding. I have two girls who are in school, and we didn't want to take them. And so I called my sister if she could come here and house sit and just kind of take my daughters to school. And she calls me. She says, "Oh, well, Dad's going to bring me." I said, "Okay, fine, that's cool." So Wednesday night they show up. My dad comes and brings my sister, and I didn't expect him to come. But he comes here, and that whole week I wasn't feeling too well. And before my father left that night, it's probably like around midnight, we had dinner here. I had asked him if he can give me a quick blessing. And it was funny because when I had asked him to give me a blessing, he gave me this smile. I mean, looking back, it was unexpected. And he gives me a blessing, and I tell him, "Okay, well, we're gonna leave in the morning. We have to be at the airport at 5 a.m. 6 a.m. He says, "You know what? We'll come back and we'll take you guys to the airport." I was like, "Oh." So the next morning, he shows my mom, my dad. They show up to take us to the airport, and on our way to the airport, he tells me of this story of when maybe back in 2016, when his life was spared. He was driving home after dropping my mom after work, and he was stopped. I think it was like 250 on I-215, and all he hears was this big screeching noise. He looks up in his rearview mirror and he sees this big bus coming full speed, and so he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna. This is the yeah." So he knows, I thought I was gonna die. And he puts his head down, closes his eyes to brace himself for the impact, because it was coming full speed. And the next second, he hears this big crash on the side of him, and he sees the bus veered off, and he hit this big semi truck on the side. And he tells me that story because he says, and he's bearing his testimony. He says, so many times the Lord has spared my life, more than once. And he says, it's a miracle that I'm still here. It's a miracle that the Lord gave me this time to spend with my family, because he thought his life was done. And he was just telling me how grateful he was and bearing his testimony. And I was like, "Okay, that's great, Dad. That's a great story. Thank you for," it's out of the blue. And so he takes us to the airport, and that was Thursday, November 22nd. So we go to Hawaii, we come back, and he picks us up from the airport, brings us back here, and he has this little cough, and he says that he's been sick over the past couple of days, and he said he got tested for COVID. He had COVID. The next day, my mom calls me and says that they're taking my dad to the hospital because he had a hard time breathing. And so he goes to the hospital that Wednesday. I call him Thursday just to check up on him, and he said he's doing better. I called him on FaceTime, and he couldn't talk because he was on the ventilator, but he gave me the thumbs up. He's fine, he's breathing. He was texting me. Saturday morning around 6 a.m., my mom calls me and tells me that my dad is in ICU because he had a massive heart attack early that morning. So that got me worried. And around, I want to say 1 p.m. or 12 p.m., 12 noon that same day, that Saturday, I think it was the 31st of November, I get the doctor calls all my siblings on a FaceTime, and tells us that my dad has little to no chance to survive this situation he was in, and that one of us could come in and just kind of spend a couple of hours with him. So I go in because I was the closest to where he was, and I get there, and the doctor sits me down, and they tell me that my dad's gonna die. And so that was like the hardest. There's a hard conversation, but it's such a hard pill to swallow. Yeah. Because I was like, just a week ago, my dad was fine, and he gave me a blessing, and we were talking. And so they just wanted to prepare me. So I went in. I sat there for maybe about 4 hours, talking with him, and just expressing my love, my gratitude. And so before I left, I feel an impression just to give my dad a quick blessing. So I give him a blessing, and then I go home. And that whole day was super hard for me because so many thoughts were, going through my mind. Is my dad gonna live? Is he gonna be okay? Sunday morning comes around, and every morning I start my days off with scripture study and things like that. And so, but it was funny, that morning there were two talks that came to my mind as clear as day. It was Elder Holland's talk from Waiting on the Lord. Yes. And Elder Oak's talk he gave a couple years ago called Timing, the Lord's Timing. So I read those two talks, and it really gave me hope, but also trust in God's plan, and understanding that our lives is part of His plan. And so, then also I was nearing the end of my Book of Mormon study, and I was reading in Mormon chapter 9. But there's a specific verse in there that says that, and these are the signs that will follow those that believe in His name, that we shall put our hands on those who, I'm paraphrasing, our hands on the sick, and they shall be healed. Mm-hmm. And so when I read that, I was like, yes, I believe. Like, I have faith. I just have faith that my dad would be healed, that was my prayer. That was the main thing I was praying for. So that was Sunday morning. Around mid-afternoon, we get a call from the doctor. The doctor says, your dad, his condition is somehow has gotten better. His blood pressure is going back to normal. He's off all the medication that he was on, and now we're just waiting for him to wake back up. And man, that brought me so much joy and so much relief. Later that night, around midnight, we get another call from the doctor telling us that you should come down. Your dad's not going to make it through the night. And like, that was devastating. Yeah. And I was like, that's weird. Yeah. That was I didn't want to go in because it was such a heavy burden. That whole Saturday, it was hard for me to see my dad like that and go through that alone. Right. And so I didn't want to go back in. But my wife, she's like, you should go in, and if this is Dad's last hours, you should go be with him and not let him go through this alone. So I drove back in, and I was grateful because my little brother was able to come as well. They allowed him to go in. And so my brother and I were able to sit in the room with my dad for his last 5 hours of life. A couple of days after my dad had passed, he had passed November 2nd, that Monday morning, I sat here pondering, like, why wasn't my dad's life spared? Like, why didn't he receive the miracle that I was praying for, that we were all fasting for? And that, there was those questions and that were running through my mind, and it was bothering me. And immediately, my mind was taken back to all these series of events that led up to my dad's passing. And it started from that Wednesday night when he gave me a blessing. And our drive to the airport, out of nowhere, he tells me of that story, bearing testimony of the many times, the many miracles that he has witnessed in his life, where he witnessed God's hand in preserving his life. And he bore testimony of that. And that wasn't a coincidence. But I asked my mom a couple of days after he died, what was Dad doing like what was he into, you know? And she would say, you know what, for the past couple of months, he was watching a lot of conference talks, and he was reading his scriptures more often than usual. And there would be many times where she would wake up in the middle of the night to find him praying. And like, you know, and maybe I feel like my dad was, it was the Spirit that morning urging him to come take me to the airport to bear testimony and tell that story, so that there would be no doubt in my mind that God is a merciful God, and that there have been many times that God has shown tender mercies. I'm grateful that God didn't shield me from that, and that I was able to go through and feel all those emotions, even the doubt and the discouragement. He allowed me to feel all that. The gospel became more real to me in those months, and so now I'm just I want to do better, you know, have more faith, be more obedient, and help others and serve others, and you know, be a better son, a better brother, and just make sure I'm testifying all the time to my kids, my siblings, you know. And I think that's how you show, I show my gratitude for God's grace and His goodness.